They say family is supposed to be your greatest support system, a safety net that catches you when life falls apart. But for me, that net felt more like a trap. I was the responsible one in my family, the one who always held things together. When bills were due, it was my paycheck they waited for. When things went wrong, it was me who fixed them. Everyone said I was so mature for my age, but really, I just didn't have a choice. My parents weren't bad people. They just expected too much. Maybe it started when I got my first job at 17. I remember the pride in my dad's eyes when I handed him part of my first paycheck. "You're doing good, kid," he said. That one sentence felt like love. So I kept doing it, over and over again, thinking their approval was something I could earn if I worked hard enough. By the time I turned 25, I was juggling 2 jobs. I'd leave the morning shift at the cafe, change clothes in my car, and head straight to the night shift at the warehouse. My friends were going out, traveling, enjoying life, and I was counting coins to make sure my family's electricity didn't get cut off. My younger sister, Layla, had always been their favorite. She was bubbly, charismatic, the kind of person who could charm her way through life. She didn't have to work. My parents said she should focus on her future, but somehow, her future always needed my money. When she wanted a new phone, I bought it. When she needed tuition, I paid it. When her birthday came, I made sure she had something special, even if it meant skipping meals that week. Every time I helped, I told myself, this is what good families do. But somewhere deep down, I started to feel invisible. The breaking point came on my graduation day. It wasn't just any graduation. It was the day I finally completed my degree after years of studying, part-time while working double shifts. I had done it entirely on my own. No financial help, no emotional support, no "we're proud of you" texts. Just sheer willpower and caffeine. I remember sending out invitations to everyone in the family. I even saved a seat for my parents in the front row, right where they could see me walk across the stage. They didn't come, no call. No text, nothing. Instead, I got a message from my sister. "Hey, sorry. Mom and Dad couldn't make it. We're out shopping for the trip next week. You know how hectic things are." That text shattered something inside me. I stared at my phone, trying to convince myself it didn't matter. But it did. It mattered more than I wanted to admit. I looked around the auditorium as names were called, watching other families cheer, clap, and wave flowers in the air. I smiled for photos, holding my degree like it was a trophy, but inside I felt hollow. After the ceremony, I went home, placed my degree on the table, and sat in silence. Not a single message from them that night. I kept refreshing my phone until midnight, hoping maybe I'd see "we're proud of you." But nothing came. That was the first night I realized I wasn't part of a family. I was their backup plan. Still, I didn't let it break me. Instead, I made a quiet promise. If they won't celebrate me, I'll build a life so loud they'll have no choice but to notice. The next few years were brutal but transformative. I moved out, found a better job, and slowly started building something for myself. I learned how to invest, how to save, how to live for me. No more paying their bills. No more emergency loans that never got repaid. Every time they called asking for money, I said no, politely but firmly. At first, they acted shocked, then angry, then distant. My mother even said, "You've changed," like it was an insult. She was right, I had. By 30, I finally saved enough to buy my own apartment. It wasn't huge or luxurious, but it was mine. I stood on the balcony that first night, looking at the skyline, thinking about all the nights I had worked myself to exhaustion for people who never looked back. I could have called them. I could have invited them to see it. But a quiet voice inside me whispered, they wouldn't care unless it benefits them. So I didn't. Instead, I posted a photo on Instagram, a simple picture of me standing on the balcony, city lights glowing behind me, holding a glass of cheap wine. The caption read, "Years of hard work. Finally home." I didn't tag anyone. I didn't need to. Within hours, my phone started buzzing. Texts from cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Comments like, "Wow, you made it!" and so proud of you. And then my mom's message popped up. Is that your place? Looks beautiful. We should come visit sometime. My dad texted too. Heard you bought a flat. Congrats, kid. Let's catch up soon. After years of silence, suddenly, they wanted to talk. Suddenly, they remembered I existed. I didn't reply that night. I just stared at the screen, thinking about how it took a picture, not years of sacrifice, to make them notice. That's when the idea of revenge began to take shape. Not the kind with shouting, anger, or confrontation, but the quiet kind, the kind where success speaks louder than words. I didn't plan to hurt them. I just wanted them to feel what I felt, to see what happens when the responsible one finally stops carrying everyone else's weight. And trust me. They did. When I woke up the next morning, my phone was still buzzing. Notifications flooded in from every corner of my past. Family, old classmates, co-workers, people who once ignored my existence. Suddenly, I was visible. It's funny how one photo can change everything. For years, I was the one who reached out first, who remembered birthdays, who called to check in. But now, it seemed like everyone had something to say. Wow, you did this all on your own? You've come so far. We always knew you'd make it someday. Always knew. Where were they when I was working 14-hour shifts, eating ramen for dinner, praying I wouldn't fall asleep behind the wheel? Still, I smiled. I liked how it felt, not to be bitter, but to finally be seen. Later that week, my mom called again. Her tone was unusually soft. Beta, I showed your picture to your aunties. Everyone was so impressed. You've done so well for yourself. I could hear the pride in her voice, the same pride she'd never shown when I actually needed it. I said, "Thanks, Mom," keeping my tone neutral. She hesitated before adding, "We should plan a family dinner soon. You can tell us about your work, your new place. Layla would love to see it too." Ah, Layla. The golden child. I hadn't spoken to her properly in almost a year. The last time we talked, she'd borrowed money for a short-term thing. I never saw that money again. Still, I agreed. Sure, dinner sounds good. Something in my voice must have sounded different because she replied quickly, "You sound happy." "I am," I said, and for the first time in years, it was true. The dinner was set for Sunday. I spent the day cleaning my apartment, lighting a few candles and preparing food. Simple but elegant. Not to impress them, but to remind myself how far I'd come. When they arrived, my mom's jaw dropped. "Oh my goodness," she said, stepping inside. "This place is so nice. And this view? Wow!" Dad nodded approvingly, scanning the furniture. "You've really made something of yourself." And Layla, she just stood there, eyes darting between the framed degree on the wall and the minimalist decor. "You did all this alone?" she asked. "Yeah," I replied, smiling. "Every bit of it." They looked around, pretending to be happy, but I could feel the unease in the room. For once, I was the one who had something they didn't. During dinner, Mom kept asking about my salary, my job benefits, my plans. "So, are you planning to move somewhere bigger soon? Maybe buy a car?" I laughed softly. "I'm just enjoying what I have for now." Then she said, almost casually, "Your father's been thinking about renovating the house. Maybe you could help with that financially." There it was, the familiar pull, the unspoken expectation that I would still be their safety net. I put my fork down and smiled politely. "I think it's time you both enjoy what you've built. I've already done my part." Dad looked up sharply, clearly not used to hearing no from me. "Don't talk like that. Family helps family." "Exactly," I said, keeping my voice calm. And I did. For years. I just think it's someone else's turn now. Silence filled the table. Even Layla didn't say anything. Inside, I was trembling. It wasn't anger. It was the unfamiliar feeling of standing up for myself. After a few moments, Mom forced a smile. "Of course, Beta. You've worked hard. We're proud of you." But her eyes told a different story, one of confusion and quiet resentment. The next few weeks were interesting. Word spread quickly among relatives. Suddenly, I was the successful one of the family. Cousins who once bragged about their achievements now asked me for advice. Aunties who used to compare me to Layla now whispered, "He's doing so well, mashallah." Even Layla's tone changed. She started messaging more often, asking how I was, offering to hang out. I knew it wasn't genuine affection, it was curiosity. Once, she texted, "You're so lucky. I wish I had your life." I stared at that message for a long time before replying, "Luck had nothing to do with it." That was the moment I realized how power shifts silently, not through shouting or revenge, but through growth. Every ignored call, every forgotten birthday, every lonely night, they had turned me into someone unshakable. A few months later, I got invited to a family gathering. Normally, I would have declined, but something told me to go. When I arrived, the energy was different. People noticed me. They listened when I spoke. Even my father introduced me to someone saying, "This is my son. He's got his own place now. Great job, too." It was the first time I heard pride in his voice directed at me. But it didn't make me feel warm or vindicated. It made me realize how shallow that pride was. It wasn't for me as a person. It was for the image of success I represented. Still, I played along, smiling, being polite, letting them enjoy their moment. As the evening went on, Layla approached me. "You've changed," she said quietly. "I had to," I replied. "You're colder now." "Not cold," I said, sipping my drink. "Just finally warm to myself." She didn't respond. Just looked down, maybe realizing that for once she couldn't use guilt or charm to sway me. Later that night, when I got home, I sat on the balcony again, the same one from that photo. I thought about everything. The years of sacrifice, the loneliness, the quiet revenge that didn't need confrontation. Because real revenge isn't about making others suffer. It's about healing yourself so much that their absence no longer hurts. And in that silence, I finally felt peace. But peace doesn't last long in families like mine. Because once they see you've moved on, they'll always find a way to pull you back. And I was about to learn that lesson all over again. Peace is a strange thing. When you finally get it after years of chaos, you almost don't trust it. I spent months in that fragile peace, working, saving, decorating my apartment, and enjoying silence that wasn't filled with guilt or demands. But just when I thought the storm had passed, my phone rang one Friday evening. It was my mother. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. "Beta, we need your help. Your father's back problem has gotten worse, and the doctor says he might need treatment. It's expensive." I felt my stomach drop. The old reflex kicked in, that urge to fix everything, to rush in and help. But I caught myself. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said gently. "Have you checked if insurance covers it?" There was a pause. Then came the familiar sigh. "Insurance doesn't cover much, you know that. We thought maybe you could help, just until things get better." I closed my eyes. It was happening again. Years of conditioning don't disappear overnight. Part of me still wanted to say yes, to protect them, to prove I was still the good child. But another part of me, the one that had bled and rebuilt itself, whispered, "You've already done enough." "Mom," I said quietly, "I can't do that right now." Her tone changed instantly. "Can't or won't?" The disappointment in her voice cut deeper than I expected. "I've helped before," I said, trying to stay calm. "I need to focus on my own life now." She didn't respond right away. Then in a low voice, she said, "I never thought I'd see the day when you'd turn your back on us." That hurt. It really did. Not because it was true, but because that's what she wanted me to feel. That night, I sat on my couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to shake off the guilt. But guilt has a way of lingering, especially when it's planted by people you love. Over the next few weeks, the calls became more frequent. Sometimes it was my dad, sometimes Layla. Each conversation had the same undertone, a mix of flattery and manipulation. "We're so proud of you." "You're doing so well." "Masha'Allah." "You're the only one we can rely on." They weren't reaching out because they missed me. They reached out because they missed what I could do for them. Layla called one afternoon, pretending to make small talk. "Hey, how's work?" "You must be so busy now." I could tell she was circling around something. Finally, she said, "Actually, I'm thinking of starting a small business, like a boutique. I just need a little help with the initial setup." "It's not a loan, more like an investment?" I almost laughed. "An investment? Into what?" She giggled. "Into family, of course." I paused for a moment, then said softly, "I stopped investing in people who see me as a wallet a long time ago." Her silence on the other end said it all. That week, the family group chat started buzzing again. Pictures, jokes, updates, things they hadn't shared in years. I knew what it was. A strategy. A subtle way to pull me back in emotionally. And for a moment, I almost fell for it. Almost. Then, one morning, I got an invite. A family reunion dinner, organized by my parents. The same people who hadn't attended my graduation were now hosting a gathering, and I was the guest of honor. Something about it felt off, but I went anyway. Part of me wanted closure. Another part wanted to test my own strength. When I arrived, the smiles were wide, the hugs warm, and the questions never-ending. "How's your job? What's your salary like now? Are you planning to get married soon?" But then the real reason came out. During dessert, my dad cleared his throat. "We've been thinking about expanding the family business. It's a great opportunity, but we need a little capital to start. Since you're doing well now." There it was, the real motive behind the sudden affection. I looked around the table. Everyone's eyes were on me, hopeful, expectant, as if my success automatically belonged to them. I smiled politely. "That sounds great, Dad, but I don't think I can help." His expression stiffened. "You're earning well, aren't you?" "I am," I said, nodding. "But that doesn't mean I owe anyone my savings." The tension in the room thickened. Layla tried to lighten it with a laugh. "Come on, it's just family." "Don't be so serious." I turned to her. "You mean the same family that didn't show up when I needed them most?" You could hear a pin drop. Mom looked hurt, Dad looked angry, and Layla just looked away. I continued, my voice calm but firm. "All my life I've worked to make everyone else comfortable, even when it left me empty. I've been your support system, your ATM, your emotional sponge. But I realized something. Love that only exists when money flows isn't love at all." My dad's jaw clenched. "You've become arrogant." I smiled sadly. "No, Dad. I've just started valuing myself." I stood up, thanked them for dinner, and left. As I walked out of that house, the same one I grew up in, I felt something heavy lift off my chest. For the first time, I didn't feel like the guilty one. I felt free. When I got home, I sat on the balcony again, my place of quiet reflection. The city lights shimmered like old memories, each one reminding me of a version of myself that used to crave their approval. Not anymore. I didn't block them. I didn't cut them off completely. I just stopped showing up emotionally, stopped explaining myself, stopped seeking validation. It wasn't revenge in the dramatic sense. There were no shouting matches or grand confrontations. But it was the kind that mattered most, revenge through indifference. And slowly, they began to feel it. The calls became fewer. The guilt trips weaker. The silence heavier. They were finally realizing what life looked like without the person who always fixed everything. And in that realization, I found my peace. But as much as I told myself I was done, life has a funny way of testing your resolve. Because just when I thought I'd close that chapter for good, something unexpected happened. Something that would make me question whether forgiveness was even possible. Months passed after that dinner. The silence between my family and me had turned from tension into routine. At first, I'd wake up expecting a missed call or a guilt-laced message. But gradually, the quiet became peaceful, a sign that they'd finally stopped trying to pull me back. I was thriving. My job was stable, my apartment felt like home, and for once I was living for myself. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I made new friends. People who valued me for who I was, not for what I could provide. Life felt balanced. Until one afternoon, my phone rang again. It was an unknown number. When I answered, a weak voice spoke on the other end. "Beta, it's me." It was my father. His tone was softer, slower. "Your mom isn't well. She's been admitted to the hospital. Layla's there, but she's scared. We need you." For a moment, I didn't move. My fingers tightened around the phone. It was the exact kind of call I'd been afraid of, the kind that forces you to face everything you thought you'd left behind. "I'll come," I said finally. When I reached the hospital, the smell of antiseptic hit me first, sharp, cold, and unnervingly sterile. Layla was sitting outside the ward, her face pale and tired. When she saw me, she stood up instantly. "You came." "I did," I replied. She looked like she wanted to say something else but didn't. Instead, she led me inside. Mom lay on the hospital bed, frail but awake. She smiled weakly when she saw me. "You're here," she whispered. "Of course," I said, pulling up a chair. We didn't talk about the fights, the distance, or the silence. We just talked about small things. My work, her favorite TV shows, the food at the hospital. For the first time in years, it felt peaceful. Then, out of nowhere, she said, "I'm sorry." I froze. "For what?" "For everything," she said, her eyes glistening. "We didn't see how much we were taking from you. I thought you were strong enough to handle it, but that's not fair. We should have been proud long before you made it." Her words broke something open in me. All the anger I'd buried, all the resentment I'd carried, it suddenly felt small. Not gone, but smaller. I held her hand and said, "I just wanted you to see me. Not for what I gave, but for who I am." Tears welled in her eyes. "I see you now, Beta. That was all I needed." Over the next few weeks, I visited her often. My dad was quieter now, less demanding. Sometimes we'd just sit in silence. Once he said, "You've done well for yourself." I didn't say it enough. It wasn't a full apology, but it was enough to show me he'd changed. Or at least understood. Layla, too, seemed different. She stopped asking for money, stopped bragging, stopped pretending. Instead, she started helping at home, taking care of our parents, and slowly rebuilding the trust that had cracked between us. We didn't magically become a perfect family. But the walls between us had cracks now, and through those cracks, light started to slip in. A few months later, Mom was discharged. I threw a small dinner at my apartment to celebrate. It was the first time my family had been there since that tense evening months ago. The difference this time was unmistakable. They came not as people who wanted something, but as people who simply wanted to be there. Mom walked around the living room, smiling at my art on the walls. "You've made this place beautiful," she said. I smiled. "It's my piece," she nodded softly. "And you've earned it." Dad, sitting on the couch, chuckled. "I still can't believe you did all this yourself." "I had to," I said with a grin. No one else was going to do it for me. He laughed, genuinely this time. It was the first time in years that his laughter didn't sting. Layla helped set the table, and for once we talked like siblings, not competitors. She told me she'd started her own small online business, this time with her own savings. "You were right," she said, smiling shyly. "It feels better when you build it yourself." I looked at her and nodded. It always does. That night after everyone left, I stood by the balcony again. The same spot that had witnessed my frustration, my pain, and my triumph. The city lights shimmered as if reflecting the chaos and calm of my journey. I realized then that revenge had never been the goal. What I truly wanted was respect, recognition, a family that didn't take me for granted, and in a strange way, I had gotten that, not by fighting, not by yelling, but by letting distance teach them what words never could. Sometimes silence is the loudest form of truth. A week later, I got a message from Mom. "Dinner next Sunday? Your father's making biryani. Don't be late," I smiled. No manipulation, no guilt. Just a simple, normal message. Something I'd wanted for years. I replied, "I'll be there." Then I put my phone down and poured myself a cup of coffee. Outside, the night breeze felt gentle, carrying a sense of calm I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I had healed, and in that healing, I found a peace deeper than revenge, forgiveness without forgetting. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't making them regret losing you. It's living so well that they finally understand why they should have valued you when they had the chance. And that's exactly what I did.